Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart, where we affirm each week that love is the doctrine of this church, the quest for truth and its sacrament, service is its prayer, and to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Since not everyone can attend in person, we are streaming this worship service online, and we extend a special welcome to all who are joining its virtuality. The joys and sorrows portion of our service, however, is private, and we will temporarily pause the stream for that. Other than that, this worship service is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on our website. We invite you now to enter sacred time, to make this place sacred by our presence and intention. Please turn off or silence your devices, and as you do so, I invite you to also turn down the volume, distractions where they are your fear or anxiety or the armor that you use to protect yourself from the world. So you can do that as slowly as you need to. Just breathe. Try not to let go of any expectations, to drop any guilt or shame, to trust in the possibility of forgiveness. Try to let go of these things, other things, and be here in this moment so you can start to walk the maze within your heart. Guide your steps into its questioning curves. This labyrinth is a puzzle leading you deeper into your own truths. Listen in the twists and turns. Listen in the openness within all searching. Listen, a wisdom within you calls to a wisdom beyond you, and in that dialogue lies peace. As honorary Unitarian Albert Schweitzer noted, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. In that spirit of rekindling one another's sparks, please join together in lighting our chalice by reading together the words on the screen and in your order of service. Of people of faith, with loves and sorrows, gifts and needs, we light this beacon of hope, signs for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life that we share together.
We need a celebration that speaks the spring-inspired word about life and death. I invite you to open your gray hymnals to reading 627 for a responsive reading. I'll read the regular text, and I invite you to join in reading the italics. It's by Max Kutz. We need a celebration that speaks the spring-inspired word about life and death, about us as we live and die, through all the cycling seasons, days, and years. We need the sense of deity to crack our own hard brown December husks and push life out of inner tombs and outer pain. Unless we move the seasons of the self, and spring can come for us, the winter will go on, and Easter will remain a myth, and life will never come again, despite the fact of spring. So sometimes in life we're prompted to sing a new song together, so we'll practice doing that now, both embracing whatever discomfort might be in this for you, and also bravely singing out so that we can hear your voice. I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in singing hymn 119, Once to Every Soul and Nation. Please be seated. It's getting a little warmer slightly sometimes in fits and starts, sometimes a little bit less so, and the temperatures decline. But within our hearts, the weather comes and goes regardless of what's going on outside. The events of life have their impact. They lift us up, they bring us down, and in this space, we can share them and offer them, speak them into voice, have others hear them, receive them, hold them with us. And so I'll invite you to share your joys and sorrows into this space. I'll come up to you at the microphone if you'd like to share one, and I'd ask that you share your name with us so that we know who you are. So does anybody have a joy or a sorrow this morning? Yes. lives on in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. May we continue to weave the fabric of this congregation into ever more beautiful patterns. To worship is to pay utmost attention to that which is most worth paying attention to. So when we gather each Sunday morning, we strive to bring that level of care and attention to our being together. But our ability to do that very well rests on our Unitarian Universalist covenants, the faithful promises that we make to each other and to which we agree to be held accountable. But we're not about being perfect. We're about showing up with our best efforts and learning together. Our covenants are inherently forgiving, but even when they are broken, even then we still seek restoration and renewal. Stumbling is wholeheartedly welcomed. So in that spirit, may we lean into the productive discomfort that makes possible all learning and all growth and all community. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join in our recovenanting as we review 3 lines of our behavioral covenant. And I invite you to respond with, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not dwelled together in peace, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not sought the truth in love, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. For all the ways that we have not helped one another, may we forgive ourselves and each other and begin again in love. I invite you to join now in our doxology, the words in your order of service and on the screen.
You may be seated. Jesus and his followers had theatrically, militantly marched into the capital city, and then he'd publicly disrupted the commerce in the temple. And then he was confronted by members of the ruling Jerusalem establishment who demanded that he present his political credentials, demanding, by what authority are you doing these things and who gave it to you? As far as the guardians of civic order were concerned, things had gone far enough. It was one thing for this Nazarene to have made a name for himself playing the prophet in distant provinces, and quite another to create a protest spectacle in the city of David, especially during the feast days, that tension-ridden season in the nation's life when old symbols of liberation, uneasily latent, always threatened to erupt again. It was time to force this country preacher to divulge just what he was up to. By what authority and who gave it to you? How will Jesus counter? He pauses, eyeing his antagonists. He understands that defending his practice is a losing proposition as long as they are framing the issue. Measuring his words carefully, he decides to go on the offensive. I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will answer you. Here's Jesus' most powerful weapon, questions that drive a sharp wedge of inquiry into the cracks of the status quo in order to pry open its internal contradictions. He asks them about John the Baptist. Where do you think John's authority came from? Jesus' opponents stiffen up, gulp hard, huddling. John was a recently martyred rebel prophet, and what people thought of him was a delicate political matter indeed. He was a popular national hero, so it wouldn't be wise for them to say anything bad about him, but they also couldn't praise him because they had consented to his execution, and it would be an obvious lie for them to pretend to favor him. Jesus had, in effect, thrown the challenge back in their faces. Tell me whose side you are on, and we'll talk. The breeze shifts, and an awkward silence settles heavily over the scene. Finally, they respond. We do not know. Like all official spokespeople under pressure, they issue no comment, refusing either to confirm or deny. So Jesus shrugs and walks. The moral of the story, if we want to know what Jesus stands for in the conflict-ridden world, we had better be prepared to be questioned by him about our own alignments.
So Unitarian Universalism, as I mentioned last week, has this tradition of questioning. There's the classic jokes about burning a question mark in somebody's lawn that has lots and lots of permutations. But in practice, how does this questioning work in Unitarian Universalism? The beautiful opportunities that are presented when we show up in our fullness and we encounter other human beings in their fullness, and we feel inspired or frustrated or confused or delighted or perplexed in that meeting of different humanities, so much can be born into the world. So much of ourselves can be questioned. So much of themselves can also be brought into question. There's also the risks of us conspiring together, of letting each other stay asleep, of letting each other stay the same, of making some silent agreement with each other that we will continue on as we have always continued on. And any of us humans, Unitarian Universalist or otherwise, can choose the path of uncomfortable challenge and growth, or the path of uncomfortable sameness. In this series, we're looking at these different possibilities and aiming to choose that first path, the one of choosing challenge and growth that is often uncomfortable. And so in the first week of our series, Cindy Hessman offered a wonderful example of being willing to do something uncomfortable, public speaking, for the benefit of the greater good. And both in her stepping up to share her story with us during the worship service, and also in her vivid description of how in the past she faced and handled the challenging questions and opportunities put to her by others, a student pointedly asking her how she would keep them safe, a fellow congregant inquiring what would our faith not, when would our, excuse me, the phrasing of this is challenging to not trip over. What would our faith not be our faith without? And also an invitation to share her personal story at the State House. In each of those instances, Cindy walked the path of letting herself be challenged to grow, and sometimes even going so far as to do the thing that she thought that she couldn't do. And then a couple weeks ago, Sandy Waters offered us the challenge of possibility, of having the moral imagination to see what needs to be done, to take up that responsibility and ask ourselves, what am I doing here? What are we doing here? To make a contract or a covenant with that moral imagination, to be willing to embrace even possibilities that might have others question your sanity. So then last week, we explored a little bit about how what the two of them talked about connects to our Unitarian Universalist perspective. of not getting stuck in old ways, of continually trying to uncover what is underneath the current way of doing things, of continually exploring what is closer to the core of value in all of this, that would align ourselves more closely to our ideals and our commitments. Invited everyone to consider how each of us could support others in living more true to our ideals and commitments. So this week we'll be extending that into opening ourselves up to being questioned about our loyalties. But this opening up, this exploring of discomfort and possibility isn't something that I'm inviting you to do as an individual. I'm inviting you to do it as a congregation. So look around this room at the rest of these people who are in this space with you, who are also on this journey with you. Maybe some faces who might smile back if you were to smile at them, or some people who might wave if you were to wave at them. These fellow travelers on the journey, just taking a moment to greet these other humans. I think that one of the most valuable insights in the back of our hymnals are these words written by Mark Morrison Reed. Alone, our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen. To be human is to have a limited perspective, to only be able to see or understand so much. So when has someone else posed a question or a challenge to you that has opened up your own perspective about yourself? That had you realize something about yourself that you hadn't realized before? So we'll take a moment to consider this question silently to yourself. Here's the abbreviated version of that. When's an example of when someone had pointedly asked you about your loyalties? So we'll take a moment to silently consider it as Jeremy plays some music for us. And then once he's done playing that, we'll talk with one another very, very briefly about sort of the headlines of what we were considering silently with each other. So whatever contemplations you went through, whatever came up for you, whatever questions might be sitting in you, we'll have 2 minutes, only 2 minutes, to share with a neighbor, preferably just one, because it's a limited amount of time, maybe 2 at most. Just what came up for you in that consideration? What did you think? What was in your heart? What was in your mind? And I'll let you know when the 2 minutes is up, and then we'll share about that experience. Okay, that brings us to the end of our time for sharing in a small group or one-on-one. And so I'll invite us back into our awareness of the shared space that we're in. And does anybody have anything that you heard or anything that you said that you want to bring into our space and share something that stuck with you, something that that you noticed being spoken?
It was like there was an assumption that we believed one way. We both talked about that wait a minute, I don't agree with you. That's wrong. But it wasn't like they asked us. They just assumed that we had a certain, and for me it was like dealing with a racist statement or something that you would question.
Yeah. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, thank you. Other folks, yeah.
So my wife just described at the time when a friend of hers asked her if she only did things that she was good at, and she realized that there was truth in that, and that was really eye-opening to her.
Thank you. Yeah. You can hear? Relating a story. You want to say it? Yeah.
So this would have been in my service, but I cut it for time. So I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about things we liked. And I said, well, I like, hiking, I like reading. I had piano lessons, but I quit because I wasn't very good at it. And I tried bowling once, but I was the best backward bowler because the ball would go by my hand, so I stopped doing that because I wasn't very good at it. And she said, well, do you only do things you're already good at? And I was like, yeah, I would want to be seen not being good at something. And that was an eye-opener for me because I cut myself off from trying things and being in public and not being good at them. And that might lead to becoming better. And then I'll cut it with the thing about public speaking, that it was a skill that could be practiced, but you had to be not good to get to the point, or writing and not being good. So that was the question that changed my life.
Thank you, Cindy. Yeah. So one more person who'd be up for sharing? Yeah.
I have a lot of conversations with my brother, both of my brothers, but mostly the one that lives nearby. And he's a libertarian / mostly votes Republican, and I'm a Democrat. And so this leads for a lot of conversation, and he reads and really, really believes that he's pretty right about how he sees things. And I can really relate to the assumption that when he'll say, well, you think this or you think that, referring to me because I'm a Democrat, I'm like, well, wait a minute, I don't necessarily agree with that particular issue or how they're handling it, or, I understand. So it's been a real challenge for me to think about what I actually do believe and how much do I care. Like, do I care about it as much as he does? So it's a growing edge. I think it's kind of an ongoing thing, and it's a great opportunity for me also to spend time with my brother, so I'm willing to do it.
Thank you, Maggie. Yeah. Well, having witnessed a little bit of our humanity, of these beautiful folks that we're sharing this experience with, I would invite you to rise and body your spirit and join in singing our next hymn, number 196, Singer of Life. Please be seated. So last week I talked a little bit about video games. Those are not the only kinds of games that I have played. For a while I was really into tabletop role-playing games. Some of you may have heard of Dungeons & Dragons, which is one particular brand that many people have played. And at the time in my life that I was doing this, it was this really wonderful feeling of getting to stay up all hours and do this at other folks' homes, and we would get some pizza or some Taco Bell or some kind of not so particularly healthy food, but it was this ritual that we had of gathering together and doing this. Sometimes we would eat at the particular place, but usually because it was so late at night, somebody would come back with a sack of food, or we would get it delivered, and we'd all just sort of huddle around in the living room and continue playing our games. I remember my regular order, I think, was 7 soft taco supremes, which I found quite satisfying. And when we got it delivered, we could stay in the energy of the game. We could just stay in that space together, in the ritual of it. There are these ways that we live our lives that develop patterns, who we spend time with, what we do together. And in those situations with my friends, there were the obvious participants. There were me and my friends who were there playing, but there were also others that were involved in our time together. There were the designers of the game. One of the games that we were playing was this game called Earth Dawn, which of course was developed from earlier Dungeons and Dragons games, which themselves were developed from the writings of folks like Robert E. Howard and Edgar Rice Burroughs and J.R.R. Tolkien. So there was this lineage of storytelling and adventure that we were drawing on. And then there were also the people who determined the places that we played those games, who planned the town, who created government policies or independent businesses that shaped the economy for those particular homes to be constructed in those particular ways that had the spaces for us to do this in. And there was the chain of folks who made possible the food that we ate. The workers at the specific Taco Bell location, the managers and owners of both the Taco Bell chain and PepsiCo or Yum brands, the people who grow the food, the raw food that goes into the actual tacos or gorditas or whatever else you might get there. When the coalition of Immokalee farm workers started organizing to protest declining wages, it introduced a quandary for those of us who had a loyal Taco Bell customer life. How should this impact how we live our lives? They organized work stoppages in 1995 and 97, 99. They held a 30-day hunger strike during that time, and they had a 230-mile march from Fort Myers to Orlando in 2000. So with the consciousness being raised of what's going on with the farm workers who are being paid not nearly enough for this work, would we hold our regular routine to be the same? Would we continue on despite it? It can seem like such a little thing, and I'm intentionally choosing a very small example here, just to get food somewhere else. You could just go to Pizza Hut. Oh, no, that's also owned by Yum Brands, so maybe a different company. But it had this cornerstone of familiarity and comfort for our friend group. Supposedly, smell is the sense that evokes the strongest memories for us. That's what I've heard the research says, and that's what I believe I've experienced in my own life. And so every time we gathered together in that way, with those familiar Taco Bell smells, we re-invoked every other time we had gotten together. Every night we'd stayed up until 3 or 4 in the morning. Every other time our characters that we were playing had set out on some new adventure or explored a dungeon together or engaged in some pitched battle with a horde of monsters. With each new event, those same sensory experiences in that same space were weaving our friendship together. So on the one hand, it's a super small thing. Where are you going for dinner? But on the other hand, a cornerstone of our very friendship and how we experience each other, of our connections with these other human beings with whom we have shared hearts and shared lives. These regular patterns that each of us have of who we associate with, of what we do with our time, of the experiences that bring us comfort or joy, if we realized that one of those patterns was in conflict with our ideals or commitments, how would we respond? If it was something relatively small or simple, like the business from which we buy our food, would that make it easier or harder to change? Or if it was something more complicated, like where we live, or what friends we have, or what we do for work, or our marriage or a long-time romantic partner, how challenging would that feel to renegotiate? Part of what was so great about our Taco Bell ritual was that it was an experience of feeling like I was at the center of things. Like I was finally in the in crowd, like I belonged somewhere. And so any prospect of upsetting that, of changing things up, brought with it the fear of that being challenged, of whatever delicate equilibrium I'd been able to discover getting lost. It is a totally natural human tendency or desire to feel like we belong, to feel like we're a part of something. And then when we're able to find that, the natural, understandable desire is to cling to it really tightly. There are two big problems with that clinging. The first problem with that clinging to a sense of belonging or being a part of something is that we tend to get stuck in habits. We stop growing, we stop learning, we stop evolving. We try to rest in our safe, comfortable, familiar way of being. After all, we found it. Why would we do anything to change that or to challenge that? But as I talked about last week, we Unitarian Universalists are so committed to not getting stuck that we evolved out of being an exclusively Christian faith. We tossed aside any creeds and soldiered forth, focusing instead on our never-ending search for truth and meaning. I had a conversation with an acquaintance once who, when he learned that I was going into ministry, this is while I was in seminary, he's like, "So you don't seem like a religious person." And I said, "Well, let me tell you about my religion." And so I talked a little bit about Unitarian Universalism, and he said, "That doesn't sound like a religion." There's this idea that religions are supposed to be about answers, but there's not much that's spiritual about trying to have the answers. Answers are what one hopes to find in a user manual. They don't take us anywhere. They don't open things up for us. They don't bring us deeper. That's true of any religion. In Buddhism, there are koans to invite us into contemplation. In Judaism, there's midrash, where we wrestle with the meaning of different texts. In Christianity, the vast majority of characters in both the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament are deeply problematic people. They are not held up as models for us to follow. They're people who are held up for us to question how we engage with life and the world. A key aspect of Unitarian Universalism is that we noticed that human psychology tends toward wanting safe answers. And so we strive to steer clear of the safe answers at nearly every turn, and it is hard. And you could argue that our denomination's 7 principles have, over time, become just another creed, another list of safe answers. The problem with safe answers is that it keeps pointing us back towards comfortable sameness that has more to do with what death is like than what life is like. So the first problem with clinging to a sense of belonging or being a part of something is that we tend to get stuck. And the second problem with doing so is that it tends to mean that we take up a lot of room at the center of things. And others who don't yet feel that sense of belonging can get squished to the margins, usually in ways that those at the center don't even realize. There's a reading by UU minister Marta Valentin that I often come back to. It's called Waiting, where she writes, "Step into the center. Come in from the margins. I will hold you here. Don't look back or around. Feel my arms. The water is rising. I will hold you as you tremble. I will warm you. Don't look out or away. Life is in here, between you and me. In this tiny space, where I end and you begin, hope lives. In this precious tiny space, no words need be whispered to tell us that we are one. You and I, we make this circle if we choose to. So come, step in. I am waiting for you. Part of what I so value about this reading is it's a rare articulation of someone at the center actively inviting and welcoming someone at the margins to join them. Usually the folks at the center stay at the center. Folks at the margins try to find their own place on the margins. But rarely, so rarely does the center invite the margins in. The danger of focusing our attentions on the center is that we lose track of those margins. Even in my very small example of Taco Bell, to eat at that particular establishment is to enter into intimate relationship with the center. Key part of our economy, the industrial food economy, of how food is grown and distributed, it's sent all over the place, and how we eat it and where we eat it. Just like to say patronize Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts is very different from patronizing, say, SIP, which is down the street, or Tiny's in Miller Beach, or Brown Skin, or Grindhouse in Griffith, or Whiting. In our simplest consumer decisions, we pick. Are we moving toward the safe center or out into the wilder margins? What are we inviting into relationship with us? How much more so even than our consumer relationships, our social relationships, the sorts of people that we spend time with, the sorts of activities that we do together, the perspective to which we are exposed. The core challenge of congregational growth is, are we truly willing to destabilize our feelings of being at the center, like we truly belong, in order to truly welcome others into the center? It's a choice between being static and evolving. It's a choice between life and death. That reading from earlier in our worship service this morning through the whole series, walk the maze within your heart. Guide your steps into its questioning curves. This labyrinth is a puzzle leading you deeper into your own truths. So listen in the twists and turns. Listen in the openness within all searching. Listen, a wisdom within you calls to a wisdom beyond you. And in that dialogue lies peace. The name of that reading is The Labyrinth. Has anybody here ever walked a labyrinth? Just a few people, third of the people. So a labyrinth, for those of you who haven't, it's basically just a pattern on the ground or on the floor. And you walk it mindfully, and it loops around itself. And so you find yourself maybe standing right next to where you were 5 minutes ago, but looking in a very different direction and in a very different point in time, and noticing that your heart might be in a different place, your mind might be in a different place. You might be going deeper into your own understanding of yourself and your place in the world. Just through a little shift, a new position in the pattern of things. There's a T.S. Eliot poem at the back of our hymnals which reads in part, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. This exploration of repositioning ourselves and thus finding new meaning in what might already be familiar is such a key part of what we do as Unitarian Universalists. That's one of the huge benefits of our involvement in the Interfaith Action Network, to engage with folks that we are in community with who we might not otherwise know or partner with, to open ourselves up to being impacted, to being changed, to subject ourselves to being challenged, to being queried, to being deepened by one another. So who do you invite in to deepen you? To question you about your own alignments, your own loyalties? How are you inviting that into your life? How could you invite that? Those are my questions that I want to leave you with, to sit with over this coming week, to contemplate, to consider. Who do you invite to deepen you? To question you about your own alignments, your loyalties. How are you inviting that? How could you invite that? May we go forward supporting each other in the difficult decisions to choose paths that are noble, all the discomfort that usually comes with that. May we color the earth in new and unfamiliar patterns, allowing ourselves to shift things in the light of others' wisdom and queries. May we discover how to be in deeper relationship with those who help to deepen us, who offer us that most Unitarian Universalist gift of checking in on our faith journey, of welcoming our gifts, of asking us the questions that guide us deeper. And may we ever be so. Amen.
In this congregation, we gather our resources to direct them to build a nobler world than we know today. This month, we are sharing our Loose Change for Social Change offering with the Menstrual Health for Gaza initiative. Faith in Action is collecting loose change for social change for the month of March to specifically support Heart to Heart International Menstrual Health for Gaza initiative, which is dedicated to distributing menstrual pads along with our hygiene kits to women and girls in Gaza. These kits are more than necessities. They empower recipients to reclaim their health, hygiene, and dignity under extraordinarily challenging conditions. Heart to Heart International is a long-established 501c3 global health humanitarian charity working in 60 countries and has a perfect 100% score from Charity Navigator. This LCFSC collection for March coincides with our community's ongoing physical collection through the end of March of menstrual products for local distribution, an effort being led by our own Patricia Riley-Churia. Please give generously in the 10 cups to support the Menstrual Health for Gaza initiative, and please donate purchased products in the collection box in the parish hall to support the needs of economically challenged local women and girls. And then some volunteers for the baskets. So the money in the baskets goes to sustaining the mission of our congregation, and the money in the cups will go to the Loose Change for Social Change. For those not with us in person today, there's an online link for both one-time and regular donations. And so for your prayers, your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. All right, and then for other opportunities to learn and grow together, we have some announcements. Michelle, did you have something you wanted to announce?
Hello. One of our birthday girls, our unseekable Roz, she works so hard doing hospitality and greeting out there during services, getting coffee hour ready, and greeting anyone that might come to the door after services start. But sometimes she would like a break from doing the hospitality and kitchen duty so that she can come sit in here and enjoy service. So we're going to put a sign-up sheet outside in the hall today. If anybody's willing to help out once a month or even every other month, that would be really cool. And then Roz could come hang out with us once in a while. Also, 4th of July is coming up faster than it seems like. The parade goes right past the church, and we've had entries in the parade in the past. Dr. Jerry Renault used to be kind enough to let us use his antique truck, and people would ride in the back, and then we'd walk behind, but we don't have that available anymore. So should we do an entry in the parade again this year, or should we do something else? If you're interested in talking about that, then let me know, and we can maybe plan a Zoom meeting or something to start thinking about that. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so we're going to go ahead with the closing hymn. Now please rise in body or spirit to join in singing. Number 122 in the gray hymnal. The closing words are from number 712. It's Romans 12:2, as translated by Robert Jewett. Do not be conformed to this eon, but instead be transformed by the renewal of the mind, that you may ascertain what is good and acceptable and wholesome. After the postlude, we will extinguish this flame, but we will continue to carry in our hearts the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment until we are together again.
Is that right? Okay, I guess. I will sing new songs of gladness.
Pretend I didn't do that first. Sorry, long-time listener, first-time caller. Please join us for fellowship in the parish hall.
And we'll have our post-worship discussion starting in 15 minutes down here. Please bring a chair if you're not there, if you're going to join us. And I hope to see you soon.